Okay. Okay.
So,
So
I'm ready.
okay. Were you? So you said you were drafted.
I was drafted in 1944, March 1944. I was in college, I think I finished one semester. I was just started a second, and I was drafted. And it was cold. I remember it was a cold winter, and they sent us out here to Suffolk County, to Camp Upton. And then I think I must have been there maybe a week or less. They put us on a train and sent us out west to Illinois to a camp there that was set up in World War II. It was just they bought up farmland, called it Camp Ellis, Illinois, and this was basic training. You had to get up 5:30 in the morning and get out and do calisthenics. And it was freezing out there. You did calisthenics, then you went and you got washed up and everything, and then to the chow line, you had to eat your breakfast, and then when you finished your breakfast, then you had a full day of activity. Like hiking and classrooms and this and that, just kept you busy. By the time you were finished in the evening, you were ready to go to sleep. You weren't ready to do anything else. And then, of course, I know it's like 10 o'clock, they blew the bugle. They blew the bugle, and you had to go to bed, get in bed, and you were glad to sleep there. But of course, they had the little stoves in these barracks, their wooden barracks, and they had fumes. I don't think it was too healthy, the fumes, because I caught pneumonia there. I started to cough, and they took me to the base hospital there, and I think I was in there for a week. They took care of me till I got better, and then sent me back out again. And then by the time we were finishing, it was warm. It was summertime, and you go out on a hike, go out on like a 10-mile hike, and you start getting thirsty. Oh God, I couldn't drink the water in the canteen. It was really foul. But on the way back, I kept picturing a case of beer in my mind. So as soon as we got back, I used to run to the PX and start ordering drinks and drinking stuff down. I never forget. But everybody was kind of friendly there, excepting the guy that we lived in bunk beds.
Mm.
And I had the upper bed, and this guy who was below me, he was a Polak from Buffalo or someplace.
You gotta edit that.
Yeah, real jerk, I'm gonna tell you. I get up Sunday, I wanted to put on my nice clean suit and go to town, and my suit was gone. My clean shirt and pants were gone, and so was he. So when he came back, he's wearing my clothes. I said, why'd you put on my clothes? So he's Polish. He said, well, mine were dirty. That's his answer. Well, I didn't have any clean clothes. You imagine he told me, I'll never forget that. He just so stupid. I looked at the map and I saw we were maybe 25 miles from the Mississippi River. And I always read stories, everything about the Mississippi. I said, I got to go see that Mississippi River. So I got on the road and I hitched a ride. If you were in uniform, people used to pick you up. It just looked like a muddy, it didn't look like much. Up where we were, it was like a muddy stream up there, not very, very interesting looking. But I got there and looked at it, and I came back to camp and everything. We were taking basic training, marching, and then they had classrooms, sure, we had lectures and all that crap. And then, after, I don't know how it was, a month or so, they sent us to Fort Knox, Kentucky, to work in a hospital. We were all medical. Everybody was a college graduate then, or in college, studying. That's the first time I saw operations. I went into this, I was in this operation. It was going to be, I guess they were taking out his appendix, this guy, and everything was sterile. You had to be washed and wear a mask and everything. The doctors cut this guy open, and he couldn't find the appendix. He kept cutting it and pulling out the guy's intestines. I'm watching. I'll never forget that. He finally found it, and he took it out, and he had to push everything back in. I hope that never happens to me. They brought in guys who died, I don't know, accident, something. The doctor comes in with a saw, an electric saw, and they cut off the top of the guy's head, and they take the brains out, and he slices the brains, and he can tell by the spots what every injury the guy had to his head.
Was it an autopsy?
An autopsy. I sat through this autopsy. I was a kid. I was 18 years old. I'm watching him take this guy's brains out. I mean, where could you get experience like that? Only in the, am I right? Only in the Army. After we got finished training there, then they sent us back to original base, and then we were sent to, everything was trained. In those days, the trains were not air conditioned, and they rode locomotives with steam engines, and the smoke would come through, and you feel like you're filthy, you know. They sent us up to Boston. I forgot the name of the camp in Boston, and I think we were there a couple days, a week, and then they put us on a boat in the harbor in Boston. And the thing I remember about it, I was down below someplace, and I'm looking out the porthole, and the boat is going up and down and up and down, and I start to feel sick. It must have been the first day. It was an old ocean liner. It was really an ocean liner. I don't know, it had 1,000 soldiers aboard, God knows how many. And so you had a card told you what mess you're going to. We get out in the ocean, and it's November. And the North Atlantic in November, you don't want to cross. You don't want to cross. It's all storms. There were the waves going up and down. I got so sick. I could not eat. I was vomiting. I was dry. I had the dry heaves, which means you don't have any food. It's a terrible feeling, you know. And there was no mommy. And if I got on the line to eat, as soon as I smelled the food, it was like a disaster. And I think it took us, I don't know, between 5 and 7 days to get across, because they had to avoid submarines and, you know, all kinds of things. And then we landed in Scotland. They called it Gurrick Harbor, and it was a nice big town in Scotland. But they put us into a camp, and they have metal huts, and these metal huts are set on a concrete block, and it's damp and cold up there. You never got warm. I'm telling you, it was really, really cold. At night, there was a complete blackout. You weren't allowed to, because the Germans were sending over bombers and stuff. So you walk around in the black, you know where you're going. And if you went into a restaurant club, you had to go through a little thing, and then they picked up the curtain and you went through, you know. I decided I wanted to see something in Scotland. I always heard about it. They never talk about it today. But they had a lake. It's from a song, Loch Lomond. In Scots, Loch is lake. So anyhow, I jump on a bus and I go up to Loch Lomond. Beautiful. There's a lot of mountains around it, and it's a beautiful lake, really. I mean, and I spent the day there, and I came back. I always toured. Always wanted to see whatever there was to see. You know, the Scotch people were very friendly, very nice, except I didn't understand them. The way they speak English. Are you mucking out, man? What you say? And the girls were all over the guys, you know, the Scotch girls, oh, they loved them. I developed a cold, a cough, because of all that dampness. I really wasn't used to that. So I see they had orders one day that everybody will fall out in dress uniform for inspection, except I felt sick. I wasn't going to fall out in my little uniform. I put a coat on. I put an overcoat on, and I fell out with all these people. And the sergeant looks down the line. Who's that with that coat? They came up. The colonel, they looked at me like, they sent me back to my barracks. You know. So later on, I had to go explain. I says, you know, my mother wouldn't let me go out this weather without a coat. They probably wrote in my records, this guy's a nut.
Mama's boy.
So anyhow, during most of the Depression, see, I was born in 1926, and in 1926, the country was very, very prosperous. Everybody was enjoying it, making money, and the stock market, everybody was buying stock and everything, you know, and everything was fine until 1929, when the crash occurred. So that was depression, and people lost their jobs, you know, businesses closed up, Now, I was born in South Bend, Indiana, and we lived in a little town, little farm town called Mishawaka. And my father had a store there, a clothing store. And after the crash, people had no money. Nobody came in to buy anything. He went broke there, and he had nothing to do. So his brother, who was a businessman in New York, said, "If you come to New York, move to New York, I'll find something for you to do." So my family moved to New York, and my father got into some kind of business. He had a job, but my mother, who was born out west, and her family was out there, she was never happy here in New York, and I know that. But so I became a New Yorker. But we did. Every summer we went back to South Bend and stayed with my grandparents there. That was a wonderful time. Wonderful. Everything was rationed during World War II. You couldn't buy anything unless you had a ration book. Bread, sugar, coffee, everything was rationed. You just couldn't buy all you wanted. They didn't have it. They didn't have that much stuff, because the government took it for the soldiers, right? It was an experience. It was an experience. New York City was blacked out during the war because German submarines used to lay off the coast, and if they saw a ship coming in against the lights of New York, then they torpedo them. So they blacked out New York. Oh, they dimmed it out, and you couldn't have any lights outside your house or anything like that, And then Roosevelt, of course, he came in, and he tried everything he could to get things going, but the truth is, nothing really happened until World War II, and they started giving out contracts for manufacturing, and all the companies hired people. And then the orders come that we were going to land in France. So he sent us down. They sent us down to England. They sent us down to a town, I think they called it, oh God, I think it was Springfield or something, England, the southern part of England. And once we were down there, you couldn't go out, you couldn't talk to anybody. It was all, what do they call it, locked in or something. From there, they put us aboard a boat. We went across the channel. I don't remember what month was it, October, November, December. It was probably end of November, probably December. Very cold, very windy. And then when we landed in France, in Le Havre, which is a big city, I looked at the waterfront. Every building was smashed and broken. I said, my God, what they do to the continent? Everything is destroyed here. But it was just the harbor mainly. So we landed, and as soon as we landed, they start marching us off way up the road there. And it was getting dark, and God. So then after we were marching there for a while, it was along a river. I think it was must have been the Seine, I don't know, We're marching along, and they said, okay, 10-minute break. Everybody sits down. And all of a sudden, and the river was an embankment going down. All of a sudden I hear a noise. Boom, bam, boom, boom. Some guy put his head back and his helmet went off. It went right down the bank, right into the river. This poor guy. But we had a wool cap underneath the helmet. Right. Wool cap. So he didn't care. He was happy to get rid of it. He didn't even ask for another one.
Get another one.
So then finally, we had to open our pup tents, and we slept out. And I remember it was snowy and it was really, really cold. It was like, and the nice 18-year-old boy, what are they doing? It must have been Christmas or something. And they had mail call, and I go out to mail call. I wasn't expecting anything, and they got a box. They gave me a little cardboard box that I got that my mother sent me. And the damn box looked like it had been underwater for a week. They brought it up, So I take it back to my tent. I open up the box, and there was a hard salami there, some mustard, and a knife, and I don't know, there was food in there, And goddamn, I cut that open. I started eating that real fast. You couldn't spoil that hard salami. I don't know if you're familiar with the Jewish salami. Yeah, it was perfect to send. So we were wondering why they were holding us there, in these tents. Then we found out that the Germans had started a big offensive late in the war, Battle of the Bulge. They didn't know what to do with us. They held us back, you know.
Right.
And there was a rumor they were going to all give us rifles and send us up front. And,
Oh, jeez.
it was wintertime, and the weather was bad. It was cloudy. As soon as the weather cleared, and the American planes were able to take to the air, they beat the hell out of the Germans. They blasted their tanks and everything, and that was the end of the Bulge. And then they brought us out. We set up a hospital in a town in northern France, and it was really a British sector because all the patients were brought in were Limeys. They're British soldiers and Marines. And also, I couldn't understand their English either. They spoke in some kind of dialect, you know, the lower class of England. But they were all nice guys, they're friendly guys, and had all kinds of wounds in their neck and all kinds. I got along with them good. Well, I had to take care of guys who were dying, who were wounded, and some of these guys, I was like in post-op. A lot of these guys were brought out, they were still unconscious, and in those days, every hour, 2 hours, you had to take their blood, blood pressure, and their pulse and their respiration. You had to enter it in the book.
Job.
Critical care, and I had guys die on me there, you know. No, this was American guys. Now later on, we moved up into Germany. The Germans were retreating, and they were leaving behind. A lot of guys were, you know, deserting and everything. We opened up a hospital for Germans, for German prisoners, and he spoke. A lot of them were farm boys. They didn't even know what it was all about. They just drafted and brought them in. We crossed the Rhine at night on a pontoon bridge because the original bridge had been blown up. The Germans blew up the bridge, so we crossed on this pontoon bridge. We drove across. A little scary, you know, and we set up camp on the other side there. And I don't know, it was a couple of weeks later the Germans surrendered. And there was a question whether we should push on into Berlin or let the Russians were coming from the east and we were coming from the west. So I don't know whether it's President Roosevelt or the General Eisenhower decided let the Russians go in because the Germans were still putting up a big fight. Let them get killed, right? They did. They took Berlin, but they didn't care. You know, the communists didn't care. But anyhow, while I was there, I was always in touch with my brother and the folks back home, and they told me that one of the guys who we were friendly with, belonged to the Scouts with and everything, that he was up there someplace near me. He was stationed near me. So he gave me the name of the outfit he was with, and somehow or other, I found the outfit, you know. He was studying to be an engineer, see. So they attached him to a headquarters battalion where they made maps. He became a map maker, you know. I found out where it was. I hitched a ride. I always hitched rides on some Jeep. They always had dispatch guys running with the Jeeps. I want to tell you, that's the coldest ride you ever want to go in a Jeep.
There's no cover there?
Very, very cold. They had special clothing and boots and everything. And we went on the Autobahn. There's no speed limit on the Autobahn. It goes as fast as you want, you know. Anyhow, I found this guy's outfit. I located him. He couldn't believe that I found him, you know. Alvin Stern. I think he's still living today, but I don't know where, you know. And he was so happy to see me. And I spent the night with them in his outfit, but he told me, we're pulling out tomorrow morning early. So I'll stay over and I'll go back. I guess they had to move up, and I went back to I used to get around. I don't know how I did it. I always got around, you know. President Roosevelt was the president when I was drafted and partly into the war, and then he died. He died suddenly before. Well, I think the war was over in Europe, but they were still fighting in Japan. And President Roosevelt died, and his vice president was Truman, Harry Truman. And nobody knew who the heck he was. He was some guy from, where was it? Out west someplace, Harry Truman. I'm telling you, nobody ever heard of him because Roosevelt was a big ego. He just ran the thing, nobody. So anyhow, he turned out to be a good president. He's the guy who okayed the dropping of the bomb in Japan, Truman. He never even knew they had it until he came president. They told that we got an atomic bomb. So that's what ended the war in Japan. They dropped 2 bombs. The first bomb, the Japanese didn't do anything. After they dropped the second bomb,
Enough already.
enough. And of course, hundreds of thousands were killed, but they surrendered. And so now, what happens before they surrendered, and the war was over in Europe, they start sending guys. They were going to send them to Japan. They were going to send them to the war in the Pacific. They sent us to France, and we were examining these soldiers who were being sent over there. So we didn't go over. But when I was stationed in France, it was so nice. I got a trip to Paris. I took all the opportunities I could. I had a trip to Switzerland. Went to Switzerland, and I signed up for a ski school. And I kept falling on my ass so many times. I said, the skiing is not for me. Not for me. The guy I went with, I find out he come from Minneapolis, Minnesota. He was a skier since he was like 4 years old. So he says, come on, Mom, we'll take the tram. We'll go up to the top of the mountain. Take your skis along. So I take my skis. We're actually going through the clouds. I don't know how many thousands of feet. When you get up top, you think you're at the top of the world. You look out over, We get up top, he says, oh, there's a whole group we're going to ski down again. I said, you're going to ski down? I'm going to go down the track. There's no way I'm going to ski down. So anyhow, we had a nice time there in Switzerland. Everybody was very nice there. And I found out I couldn't ski. So they have sanitariums up in the mountains there. It's supposed to be good, the fresh air. It's supposed to help you if you got TB, I don't know what kind of. So these girls would come down, So someone said, "Look, if you have to keep the girl after 9 o'clock. They don't run the trams anymore. She's got to stay overnight." So guys were.
Oh boy.
Not all of them did it. A lot of them left, but some of the guys stayed. I didn't do that. I went back to my hotel.
It's a nice Jewish boy.
Yeah, I didn't want to get in any trouble there with these girls there. So, nice trip. And then I tell you, my trip to Paris, I couldn't believe it. I saw everything you had to see. I went to every place that was mentioned, except the museum was closed. The Louvre was closed because they had to hide everything from the Germans. They would have stolen all the paintings, so they buried it someplace and it wasn't open yet. But I went to the Eiffel Tower, the famous Eiffel Tower, with my friend, and we went up there. Oh, it was like 3/4 of the way up the top. There's a club there. There's a restaurant and club, and we were drinking champagne up there, cheap champagne. We were popping the corks over the side. This was late, at night. So then we come down. We're all very, very woozy. And we find out that the subway isn't running. It stops at 12 o'clock. We got to get back to our hotel. Well, I don't really know how we got back. Maybe we took a taxi. I don't remember much. All I know is I woke up the next morning and my mouth was dry. I thought I was going to die. It's cheap champagne, it gives you a terrible hangover. I'll never forget that. Then what happened is, what they did to us after that, they sent us back to Germany through the Army of Occupation. Young people. If you're young, the older people they sent home, got families. But the young single people, they sent us back to Germany, and we were attached to an Air Force unit. We set up 3 hospitals there. Now, that's right. That's when I got the trip to Switzerland. I said, well, I got orders that you can travel and this and that. So we said, how we get there? So let's go out to the airfield. We're in the Air Force now. We were able to jump on a B-17, Doug.
The bomber?
The bomber. And we sat in the bomb bay and took off. And we went to, I forget the name of the town, big town in France, where we caught the train going to Switzerland. But we were sitting there freezing. Those days they weren't air conditioned, they weren't heated or anything. You had to wear heavy clothes. I had so many experiences that you'd never in your life have. I was always in touch with my brother. He'd write to me and I'd write to him, and he said to me that one of our good friends is missing in action. So I worked in a medical group, so I was able to contact the unit called Graves Registration. I contacted them. I said, I want to find this guy. I gave him his name and serial number. And they found his grave in Belgium where he was buried. And they gave me the exact numbers and everything, and I sent it home. I was able to help out there, you know. And they brought him back after the war. We had a nice funeral for him and everything. While we were stationed there, I get a telegram from home from the Red Cross that my mother is very sick. And they want me to go home, special leave. So gave it to the commanding officer, and they drew up orders for me, and they sent me home. Sent me back to France. And France got things ready. Then we went on a small ship. I went home on like a cargo ship. This time, I didn't get sick. It wasn't a bad trip. And not only that, they gave me a job to do. I was like a waiter in the officer's mess. So I got some good food, and it kept me busy, you know? So we pulled in New York Harbor. I didn't know it, but my name was in the paper. It was after the war, so they used to publish the names, all GIs coming home. So my parents read it in the paper, my name. So when we pulled in, we weren't going to unload yet. We was going to. So anyhow, I'm down in my room, and I hear in the loudspeaker, "Well, Corporal Roth, to report to the main deck." So I go up to the main deck, and I look down, and there's my mother, my father, my brother, the whole family is out there. So I waved to them and everything. I couldn't get off or anything to talk to them because they sent us to another camp, and they sent us to another place till I got my leave to go home. And then I got leave. I was home for a while, and then they said they were going to hold me over till my outfit came back. They weren't going to discharge me until my outfit came back. So I was stuck, you know. So then they sent me out after my leave was over. They sent me out to Missouri, Camp Crowder, Missouri. I mean, you can't believe what a backwater place this was. I couldn't believe it. I met some young guy there, you know, another GI, and we used to go out. We had no duties there. You know, we used to go out to a farm, a ranch out there, and rent a couple ponies, and we just go riding out across the prairies.
Nothing else to do, right?
A couple hours riding.
No internet?
They didn't have a phone. I said, go to this town, Joplin, Missouri. They got wooden boardwalks. You walk on it.
Oh my God, like Dodge City?
And the streets aren't paved. I never saw anything like it, you know. I went to a couple of bars. They didn't want to see these people. They want to know. They didn't have any teeth. Real backward place there. So this guy, this young guy, I don't know where he was from. I don't know who he was. He used to go to town. He was a little older than me. So he said, I met this girl in town. You imagine what she looked like, you know. I met this girl in town. She invited me to go home with her and spend the night with her. So I went home and I spent the night with her. I found out how to spend the night with her and her mother in the same bed. I couldn't believe some of these stories. Real backcountry stuff, all right? You know? They hung around there, I don't know, a week or so, two. And then they decided they had a job for me to send me back east. So get on the train again, same steam engine, the same the filthy cars, you know. So I come back to New York, and where do you think they sent me? They sent me to a hospital out here, sent me to Pilgrim State. It was taken over by the Army. And all the patients at that time were guys who were, they were all mentally, it was a mental hospital. Right. They put me in charge of a ward with these guys. They locked me in. I had to make sure that they were fed, that they were eaten, had to shave them, they couldn't give them any razor, everything. So one day they tell me, okay, take them out to the ball field. So the first guy gets up the bat, he hits the ball out and he runs to first base and he keeps running. He never stops. Yeah, I had to go after him. This guy, no more ball playing for these guys. So then they said, oh, they had schedules. You had to take them down. They used to have, I took them down for the shock treatments. And they didn't want it. It was a terrible thing. They put the electrodes on it, and then when they give them the shock, the whole body goes like this. What they do is destroy parts of the brain that they think is affecting.
They didn't know what they were doing, though.
What a horrible thing. They don't do it anymore. I don't think you
No.
treatment anymore. But can you imagine what they did that? And I had to stand there. Watch.
And then take them back.
And I took them back. They were like zombies. When you took them back, you know. And here I'm a kid. I must have been about 19, maybe 19, 20. I had experiences you never in your lifetime would have. A lot of things there, really. I remember when I was in France, we were stationed this time. We stayed in a nice house there and everything. We had a little hospital set up. So I used to wander around, just see. So I'm wandering up this back road someplace there by myself, and I find a German ammunition dump out in the field, everything covered, you know. I go through the stuff, and I find there's like a suitcase full of hand grenades. And that's all I had to see is some hand grenades, right? So I take a couple of the hand grenades, and I unscrewed them, and I took the powder out, see, and I brought them back with me.
Yeah.
So I go home, and I'm up in my room there, which was on the second floor, looking out over this field. And a couple of the guys are coming up the field and everything, and I say, "Hey boys, catch this!" And I throw the grenade. These guys split in every direction. They thought they were gonna die. They had inspection. You weren't allowed to have any of that stuff. It was. I shared a room with a guy. I never spoke to him. He didn't speak to anybody. He used to read books. His mother used to send him books. All he did was read. So, you know, he's a nice guy. So all the contraband that I had, I put under his bed. Because I figured they know he. So they came searching. They searched my room, my lockers for all that stuff. Didn't find a thing. We got clean. He had all that stuff.
They didn't search him.
He didn't know he had it. I never told him. I'll never forget that. It was crazy. You know, this dude was crazy. Oh, God, I can't believe all the things I did. Okay, I came home. It must have been 46. Got out of the Army and got right back into college. I went to Brooklyn College under the GI Bill. Under the GI Bill, they paid for your college, paid all your expenses, paid for your books and everything. And, of course, I stayed home. And it was wonderful. All the veterans came back, and we were all in college having a good time. I was on the wrestling team there and studying. And it was a really nice experience. I don't know if I'd ever gone through college if I didn't go in the Army. They paid for all that stuff. And in my last year in college, I met my wife, my future wife. I met her there. I think we studied botany over the summer, studied botany. And I asked her, I said, "What did you like about me?" She said, "I like the way you look through the microscope. You'd lift your glasses." So that must have been in 1940, and we both graduated in 1949. And that was a depression year. There weren't many jobs around, only civil service. As soon as I graduated, I got some guy with a car. He was in a wealthy family, and we went out west. I always wanted to see the West, you know. Took this kid on a trip he'll never forget. We drove to Chicago, and we got South Dakota. We went in South Dakota, we saw the Mount Rushmore. I'll never forget it. It's so unbelievable to see Mount Rushmore. We came to some town, I forget the name of the town, and we see this bar and restaurant, and they write on the outside the menu in chalk, like on the window. And it said, "Special today, prairie oysters." So we find out what are prairie oysters. When they round up the cattle in the spring, the young cattle, they cut off their balls, and they sell them as prairie oysters in the restaurant. You know, it's a specialty. You know? So Lydia wanted to take a picture of it, but she couldn't because there were two Indians standing in front of the window. They wouldn't move unless you paid them to move. I'll never forget that. And then we drove up to Montana, and one of my professors in college told me he's got a cabin up in the mountains in Montana, and he and his wife, that's where they spend the summer. He said, "If you ever dare, drop in." Well, I'll tell you, I went up to see the postmaster, and I said, how do I find this place? He says, come here, I'll show you the map. So he takes me to the wall. Says, you see, you go up this road, and then this is off the map. He says, you go up this path. This is not a road. You go up this path up in the mountains, and yeah, you'll find it. So we found it. We found this path. No more than we started this path. There's like 1,000 sheep out there. They're crossing the road and everything, and they won't move, these sheep. So I get out of the car, and I start kicking them and yelling. we had to get through these. They're so stupid, these sheep. You know? And there's one or two shepherds and with his dog, and they're moving them all up into the mountains, because as the snow recedes, the mountains become green, and then they can feed up there. Right. We drive up this path, see, we keep driving, and we're going up and up. So we come over a hill, and I look down, and I see the cabin. It's like across a little creek or river, and he had a picture of it on his desk. I said, that's where he lives. So we go down there, we drive down there, and his car's there, and they weren't there. No. So I said, I know where they are. Walk up the street, and the two of them with their boots, they're in there. They're casting. Fishing. I won't forget
Amazing.
That. Well, I gave them a yell. It was lucky they didn't fall in the water. Hey, Professor! I'm here. So that's all part of history, and I was there.